presenter. The next presenter is Dr. Sam Mathew, who is the Senior Director at Medical Affairs, Cactus Lifesciences, India. He will be talking about unveiling the dark side of publishing, predatory practices in Asian journals. Let me introduce to you Dr. Mathew. He possesses extensive experience in pharmaceutical drug development spanning over last 20 years. His diverse career includes roles as a scientist, author, peer reviewer, scientific writer, journal editor, and business leader. Dr. Mathew was employed with major pharmaceutical companies like Novartis, Biocon, GSK, and CROs like Viziphar, Biosciences, and Accenture, along with providing his services to different other organizations like Pfizer, BMS, and UCB. Dr. Mathew holds responsible editorial positions in different peer-reviewed medical journals and is recognized internationally as a subject matter expert, especially in the scholarly publishing. Dr. Mathew has an impressive track record. He has so far published 65 research articles, and I'm one of the co-authors of one of his articles last year. And being involved in writing, editing, and peer reviewing more than 4,000 research papers. That is really impressive. I welcome Dr. Matthews. Sam, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Habib. Mariam or someone, can you share this screen for me, my presentation? I have already shared the presentations with you. I have some technical issues.
Sure, no problem.
Yeah. Can you please go to the slideshow?
I already did, but the preview is not showing. Just let me redo it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, based on where you are. So welcome to the session on unveiling the dark side of publishing, predatory practices in Asian journals. Please move to the next slide. Here is a quick agenda. We will see what is Asia's contribution in the global R&D and the publications. And we will also see what is predatory practice in general. And we will also see in detail about what are the predatory practices in Asian journals. And we will go through certain predatory practices such as retraction, predatory journals in Asia, plagiarism, data fabrication, gift authorship, duplicate publications, government control and censorship, and the conflict of interest and inequity in peer review. We'll also see some of the numbers and the statistics of where Asia stands in comparison with the rest of the world. We will also see why predatory publishing is prominent in Asia and how to prevent predatory publishing practices in Asia. Please move to the next slide. So what is the contribution of Asia in the global R&D and publication? So this is a recent data published by McKinsey Research. They have compared the contribution of Asia in the global R&D in two different periods, 2006 to 2008 and 2016 to 18. What they have reported is the R&D expenditure the contribution of Asia in the R&D expenditure has increased 51% when compared to the previous times. Similarly, the number of science and engineering papers that are coming out from Asia has increased around 41%. And amazingly, the number of patents has increased around 87%. So what does it mean? That means Asia is a significant contributor to the global research and development and publications. That means any predatory practices or unethical practices in Asian continent will definitely impact the global science. Please move to the next slide. So what is predatory practice? Which we all know that. So predatory practice actually is an exploitative action by an individual or an entity, which are unethical or illegal. So these predatory practices can happen in variety of sectors, and scholarly publishing is one of the sector which has been significantly impacted by the predatory practices, and especially the continent Asia. Next slide, please. Let's have a disclaimer before we begin. So the predatory practices is a global problem. It's not only the problem of Asia. So everywhere, everyone is facing this problem, but it is slightly significant in Asia. And let's try and understand what are the predatory practices in Asian journals. So we all know about predatory journals. So I think I don't have to explain anything more. So predatory journals are the journals usually exploit through charging fees without any proper peer review, and plagiarism, which we all are very well aware of. It is nothing but, as Professor mentioned, it's nothing but copy and paste. Data fabrication and if you're not speaking, can you put yourself on mute? I can see Ivara. Yeah, thank you. Data fabrication and falsification is another predatory practice that we usually observe in India and observe in Asia. This is mainly because of the pressure leading to unethical manipulation of data influenced by cultural and institutional factors. Gift authorship, when we call it as a gift authorship, when a person who has not significantly contributed to the research, as per ICMG guideline, he's given an authorship in any paper. So gift authorship is a significant problem in Asia, mainly due to the cultural differences when compared to the West. Duplicate publication, again, unethical practices of publishing identical research in multiple journals due to the requirement to publish more number of papers for the career advancement is leading to duplicate publications. At the same time, there are some political and government impact in interference on the research have led to biased research and biased publications. At the same time, conflict of interest, as some of the presenters have already covered, conflict of interest is a bigger problem in Asia. That's mainly because of unawareness of what is conflict, or what is the conflict that needs to be declared. So it says by going, declare if you are in a doubt. So if you write a paper and you do not know whether you have a conflict of interest, whatever you think it may be a chance for a conflict of interest, please go ahead and report it. And inequity in peer review, there are multiple inequities in peer review that happens within Asia. It can be geographical inequities, and it can be sexual inequities, etc. If you can go to the next slide, please. Let's try and understand some global statistics of retractions. So if you look at the statistics from 2018 to 2022, it has increased from 7,400 articles to around close to 11,000. So this increase may be attributed to certain statistics in number of articles which are published in the predatory journals. And old statistics from 2010 to 2014 says that there is almost 9 times increase in the number of articles that are published in the predatory journal. So the image on the right side actually shows the number of articles which are retracted between 2020 and 2022 reported by Retraction Watch. It's very clear from this that of around 11,000 articles which are retracted globally by 2020 to 2022, around 20% of the articles are retracted from Asia. That actually shows the extent of predation in Asia about in scholarly publishing. Next slide, please. So what is predatory publishing? I'm sure that we all are well aware of what is predatory publishing, but these are just some characteristics of a predatory publishing. The predatory publishers or the journals usually send a lot of deceptive emails asking you to submit a paper or asking you to join their editorial board. They provide false promises of rapid and sometimes fake peer review. They lack any specific subject matter in their journal. So usually I have seen journals which are mentioned in the International Journal of Socio-Medical and Engineering Sciences. So there are no focus on the subject matter for those journals. And they do have some deceptive practices for the author fees. The name, the scope, and the addresses of the journal, the location of the journal will never match, or they have fake details. Some of these journals have very quick launch and have an overproduction of articles. I have seen journals which have 24 issues in a year. That means 2 issues in a month, which each of them host not less than 50 articles. So 2,500 to 3,000 articles in a year. So definitely practically impossible, because as editors, we know that how difficult it is to get quality articles from the authors. And sometimes they imitate well-known journals. Always there will be a problem of author-editor issues, because once you submit the article to a journal, before publication, there will be multiple issues about the authorship charges and different requirements from the journal. And then at the same time, they will have lots of fake identities, wrong bibliometrics, and indexing claims. All of the details they given in their homepage of the journal be wrong or maybe fake at the time, and the website itself will be very poor. You can find a lot of grammatical errors, spelling errors, and very deceptive practices. Going to the next slide, please. Look at some of the statistics of the predatory journals in Asia. This is not a latest data. This is around 6 to 7 years old, but I have not received a latest. I was actually looking for some data post-COVID. That's not currently available. But this also gives a clear understanding about where do we stand in predatory publications. Look at the distribution of publishers. The data says that close to 38% of the publishers are from the Asian continent. Especially 27% of them are from Indian subcontinent. If you look at the distribution of authors, again, that says that close to 69% of the authors published in predatory journals, and the distribution of publishers. So these publishers do not mean that they are the single publishers or multiple publishers or big publishing houses. Most of these publishing houses located in Asia have significantly contributed to the predatory publications. Next slide, please. Plagiarism, we all are aware of what is plagiarism, which is a criminal offense now. Overall, Asia, if you look at it, the countries like China, India, and Pakistan publish more plagiarized articles in the scholarly publication journals. And most of these common type of plagiarism are self-plagiarism, which actually nothing but using one's own work without any proper citation. So this could be due to unawareness by the authors. So at the same time, copy paste and patchwork is also being seen as in Indian journals. A recent COP study has mentioned that 25% of papers in Asian journals contain plagiarized content, and average plagiarism in Asian journals is around close to 22% versus 10% in non-Asian journals. That itself says that we are more than double than our peers in other countries, other continents. Next slide, please. As we have seen earlier, data fabrication and falsification is mainly attributed to the unnecessary pressure that is imposed by the institutions for for their academic advancements. So a global study mentioned that of the more than 2 million scientific articles which are published globally every year, around 2% of authors admit that there is data fabrication. At the same time, when they are asked about their colleagues' data misconduct, at least 14 to 19% of the authors confirmed as they are aware that their colleagues have done data misconduct. A 2018 study mentioned that 29% of journals across Asia experienced data falsification and 27% experienced fraudulent data or image manipulation. And COPE also substantiated these findings by saying that 22% of articles in Asian journals were retracted due to data fabrication or falsification, when compared to just 13% in non-Asian journals. Again, you see the difference of more than 10% here. Next slide, please. Gift authorship, as we have seen in the earlier slides, it is nothing but offering authorship to someone who has not contributed significantly to the study or the manuscript development as per the ICMJ guidelines. So a 2012 study mentioned that 40% of the papers which are published in Asian journals have at least one author who did not make any significant contribution. And 18.2% of respondents admit that gift authorship in their most recent publications. People are aware of this, but at certain times, because of the cultural differences in the Asian countries, they are not able to reject the gift authorship, or they are not able to prevent gifting authorship to their senior colleagues in the organization. A 2017 study mentioned that gift authorship was particularly prevalent in Chinese journal with around 60% of the papers. In case of East Asia, around 60% of the researchers reported that they had been gifted authorship on a paper. And 40% of researchers reported that they had been gifted authorship to someone else. So gift authorship is something which is very common, which people are aware of, but it is still happening. Gift authorship was very common in Indian journals with around 30% papers. I know that I have lots of Indian colleagues here. And how do we give authorship to our seniors in the academic setting is something which we have to go back and reflect on this process. Can we go to the next slide? Duplicate publication, again, an outcome of undue pressure for the researchers to publish multiple number of publications for their career advancements. It is reported that in Asian journals, around 11% of papers are duplicate when compared to 6.7% in non-Asian journals. And Chinese medical journals around 12.2%, and Indian medical journals, it's around 10%. So overall, it's very clear that, again, Asia is at least double than that of what we see in the non-Asian country journals. Next slide, please. Government, certain political situations, the government also controls the academic research. And this will have significant impact on the neutrality of the academic research. And 51% of Indian medical faculty feel that they are pressurized to publish for job reasons, prompting some of them to consider predatory journals because they need to publish the paper as quickly as possible. Otherwise, they will run behind their colleagues. And 60% of the researchers in India and 70% of researchers in China felt pressure to publish in high impact factor journals. 65% of the researchers in Asia felt pressure to publish in high impact factor journals. So these are mainly due to the institutional rules and regulations that will put undue pressure on the researchers to publish articles, even if it in a predatory journal. Slide, please. Conflict of interest. This is mainly due to unawareness, because as authors or researchers, we really don't understand what is a conflict of interest. And the basic question is, if you are in doubt, you have an association or affiliation with some organization, and you are in doubt whether that will have a conflict on your research, please go ahead and report it in the article. This will help the authors to identify if your conclusions or if your data are biased and how to take decisions. So it was reported in a 2012 study report that around 40% of the Asian journal articles in Asian journals have at least one author having conflict of interest related issues. Similarly, in India, it's around 50%, and China, it's around 30%. Next slide, please. Inequity or inequality in peer review. So there are three major kinds of inequalities we can look for. That is a gender bias, geographic bias, and bias against non-native English speakers. If you look at the gender bias, only 20% of the reviewers for Asian journals are women. Out of that, only 15% of the editors in Asian journals are women, and only 10% of the women secure an editorial board position in Asian journals. Even in Asian journals, more than 50% of the peer reviewers come from developed countries. This is an amazing fact, and which is something very contradicting to certain other findings by other researchers, but this is what it says in a 2018 research, that more than 50% of the peer reviewers in Asian journals are from the developed countries. This will definitely lead to a bias against non-native English authors, because manuscripts from non-native English-speaking countries, which actually include many Asian countries, may face bias in peer review due to language and presentation issues. Next slide, please. Let's look at why predatory publishing is prominent in Asia. One important reason could be, as we have seen in the earlier McKinsey report, the rapid academic growth, the expansion in education and research sectors in Asia, which will have put increased pressure to publish. And publish or perish culture, this is very, very famous in academia. So pressure to publish often may lead to academic to publish in predatory journals. And lack of awareness and training is important. Like we have seen what is conflict of interest and what is plagiarism. Even still, I am sure that from most of the Asian countries, people are not really aware of what is plagiarism. They think that copy and pasting is plagiarism, and just rephrasing the sentence will avoid plagiarism. That's not the case. If you just rephrase the sentence, but if you follow the same structure, it will still fall under plagiarism. And the language barriers, we have diverse cultures and diverse languages for in which English is not our primary language. That will also force us to publish in predatory journals. And as we have seen already, the regulatory and institutional factors like institutional rewards and recognition, which are depending on the number of publications, will also lead to predatory publishing. At the same time, the access to low-cost, high-quality journals is lacking in Asia. This is also a reason for more predation in Asia. Global reach of predatory publishers, as you know that, as a researcher, if you have at least 5 years of experience in the research and publish a couple of papers, definitely every day your email box will be bombarded with multiple emails from predatory publishers. So they do lots of aggressive marketing practices. That is also one reason. And at any point in time, there are many chances that we will fall victim of these emails. And we do not really understand, and it's very difficult for us to understand at that career stage to understand whether this is a real journal or a predatory journal. And the legal and government framework, something related to that we have already considered. And most importantly, the transformation to electronic publishing. The publishing has become quite easy now. Earlier, it was print publishing, which actually was very difficult, and only a professional journal editors or people with the professional understanding needs to do it. Now it's more of electronic publishing, and anyone can convert a PDF Word document into a PDF and attach them and to get an ISSN number. So this has actually led to a lot of publishing, predatory publishing in Asia, and a lot of open access models, which is open access model I would consider as one of the greatest advancement of equity of science. But at the same time,
Dr. Mathew, it would be nice if you could finish in next 2 minutes, please.
Yeah, I'm done with it. So, but open access is also being misused for predatory publications, and growth and innovation in open access journals. There are different ways of publication charges or funding models, which is also misused in such a way to promote this predatory journals. Next slide, please. So how to prevent predatory publishing? The first and foremost is educate researchers on predatory journals. First thing is do the right thing. Don't ever go for shortcuts, and educate the researchers on predatory journals. Strengthen the regulations and the rules and regulations of the universities and the academia, and enhance peer review standards and editorial standards by the journals. Promote access to quality journals. Utilize technology and tools by the authors to identify predatory journals and certain predatory practices, that's plagiarism. Same time, this can also be applied by the journals to avoid predations. And engage with global initiatives such as Asian Council of Science Editors meeting and their educational activities. And foster a culture of integrity. Whatever it is, I do the right. And take language support if it is needed. Transparency in fees and charges, and centralized national databases to host the Asian continental journals, which are originated from Asian continent, will also help to ensure that to a certain extent, the predatory publishing in Asia can be prevented. So there is an initiative from the WHO now, from the Southeast region office. They also have something called I just don't remember the name of the database, but they also have certain databases to support Asian publishing, Asian journals. Next slide, please. So these are the references for, because I have given a lot of numbers and data, so that are validated through these references. Thank you very much for your kind listening. Thank you. Next slide, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Mathew, for a fantastic presentation. You have outlined the context, the issues, and compared what is happening in Asia compared with the rest of the world, and which is definitely quite alarming when we think of predatory publishing. But you have nicely not only explained the reason why it is high, what are the pressures, what are the stresses, what are the drivers, but also gave us some points to be optimistic in your last slides. Thank you for that. Now let us move on to the last presentation of this session. Now I would like to invite Professor Oleg Vucheski. He is a COO, Chief Operating Officer, and co-founder of Profi, which is based in Denmark. He will be talking about revolutionizing